2013's The Last of Us marked a complete tonal change for Naughty Dog. Best known for their colorful action-adventure games, this flipped the script by focusing on dark and mature themes. Set in a post-apocalyptic world ravaged by the cordyceps virus, the developers were able to spin a thoughtful, deep narrative with tense gameplay to match. 7 years later, the studio is back with Part 2, with the goal of delivering yet another immersive and engaging story. Is The Last of Us Part 2 a worthy successor to one of the best games of the last generation? Or should it be thrown to the clickers? Taking place 4 years after the original game, the story centers on Ellie living a peaceful life in Jackson County, Wyoming. However, things take a turn for the worst after a cataclysmic event changes her life. Seeking revenge, Ellie travels deep into Seattle, unknowingly wading into a civil war between two warring factions. The Last of Us Part 2's narrative explores the idea how far a person is willing to go when someone they loved is wronged. Honing in on the cyclical nature of violence and how revenge perpetuates it, the game provides plenty of heavy encounters for players to stew on. It's a fascinating narrative that approaches its sizable cast from a gray perspective. The story highlights several acts that make it clear this isn't a black or white world, which allows for some powerful story beats and plot twists. Every moment, predictable or not, will get players to stop and think, and it all leads to some truly raw moments, both happy and sad. What sells the story is the excellent script and acting, with Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker returning as Ellie and Joel. Johnson in particular turns in a masterful performance thanks to her powerful delivery during gut-wrenching scenarios. The campaign will take anywhere between 20 and 30 hours, making The Last of Us Part 2 a massive game. However, it might be a tad too long. Much like The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, the game falls into an infinite ending trap. There are several moments where it feels like you're headed to the conclusion, only for the game to snap you back in. It can be quite jarring, even if it is intended to be a meta-commentary on the cycle of violence. Regardless, The Last of Us Part 2 successfully delivers an emotional, complex, and strongly delivered narrative that keeps players hooked throughout the entire journey. The Last of Us Part 2 is a linear story-driven action-adventure game, but Naughty Dog has built a world filled with variety. The levels and combat arenas are cleverly designed to deliver subtle visual cues to where to go next, but still stay open enough for exploration. Seattle has a story to tell, and opening it up for exploration provides greater immersion without detracting from the story. Like the original game, The Last of Us Part 2 places a heavy emphasis on survival and resource management, allowing players to collect valuable supplies. The sequel successfully expands upon crafting and upgrading through its enhanced variety. New craftable items such as stun grenades and pipe bombs open up new ways to fight off enemies. Meanwhile, the different skill trees afford players more health, enhancements to listening mode, and quicker executions, among other benefits. The Last of Us Part 2 is all about providing players more options to explore, craft, and upgrade, adding a level of variety that feeds directly into how you approach each combat scenario. While this is a third-person shooter, The Last of Us Part 2 has plenty of tools to suit every player's needs. For example, you can now go prone and skulk around, hide underwater in shallow pools, or climb ledges to gain vantage points for a more stealth approach. But those who prefer a more guns-blazing approach will be quite satisfied as well. Gunplay just feels weighty thanks to the feedback in a healthy arsenal of weapons, although ammo is still very limited, so you'll need to choose your shots very carefully. The open level design encourages players to use the environment and maybe go outside their comfort zone, and it generally leads to intense encounters. You'll use all your tools to tackle two main enemy types, humans and infected. All four infected types return to haunt your dreams alongside the new Shambler. The new dodge move makes it easier to escape the infected, but at the same time Naughty Dog has made them far more hostile to up the ante. On the flip side, humans have gotten a dose of variety as players will go up against two distinct factions, the WLF and the Seraphites. A typical militia group, the WLF utilize various rifles and pistols and provide callouts to their teammates, not to mention they have guard dogs capable of sniffing you out. Meanwhile, the Seraphites tend to hide in the darkness while using bows and long-distance weapons. Both factions challenge players in different ways and keep encounters interesting long into the campaign. Whether it's stealth, guns blazing, or a combination of both, The Last of Us Part 2 is so satisfying to play. Naughty Dog's ability to push graphical fidelity on consoles is legendary, and The Last of Us Part 2 is yet another great example thanks to the pixel-intensive models, high-resolution textures, and top-notch lighting and rendering effects. They have managed to cram as much detail in as possible, delivering a highly believable bleak world that fully immerses the player with such level of perfection. Whether it be a dilapidated child's room, the lively streets of Jackson, the rolling waves or the swaying grass, the game goes to great pains to hook players' senses. All of this runs at a solid 30 frames per second and it rarely slips up. It all adds up to an immaculate technical presentation that's one of the best in this generation. The Last of Us left a memorable impression thanks to its pristine presentation, award-worthy performances, tense gameplay, and thought-provoking story. It was a hard act to follow, but Naughty Dog was able to get it done. They've managed to craft a highly ambitious sequel that builds and expands upon what made the original so successful. Built on the idea of cyclical violence, The Last of Us Part 2 delivers an emotional and raw story. It may go on a little long, but its rousing themes and performance make it an engrossing tale. The world is larger, giving players more latitude over how they explore and engage with it, and combat too has been tightened up, providing more gameplay opportunities and variety. It's all wrapped together in a gorgeous presentation that represents Naughty Dog's PS4 swan song. The Last of Us Part 2's harrowing tale may not leave everyone happy, but it is another home run for Naughty Dog. As always, if you like this review, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Otherwise, for everything The Last of Us and gaming related, head on over to hardcoregamer.com for your fix.